Talk Show is brought to you by
Organissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.organissima.com. Organissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
You are listening to Let's Talk About It with your show host, the celebrity Dr. Cheryl BryantBruce. You are here with Cheryl BryantBruce, MD, the celebrity doc, and Hisham Elenmonti, Hurricane H, and you are here with Chatters That Matters. Let's talk about it. Tonight, we have an exciting guest for you, reminding you that Chatters That Matter is here to not just educate you, but to entertain you and to bring you bites of information that we hope will make an impact in your life for a better world. Tonight, we have with us Sara Jane Werp, who is with Service Paws for Veterans. She is an amazing animal trainer who is very unique amongst animal trainers because as opposed to just being trained to train animals, Sara is actually educated to train animals, having gone all the way from studying the wild dogs of Botswana to taking courses at University of California at Davis. This woman knows her dogs. So without further ado, I bring to you Sara Jane Werp.
Well, thank you, Dr. BryantBruce, and thank you, Hurricane. Such a pleasure to be here, and it's a very, dogs are God spelled backwards. And
Absolutely.
Truly, dogs bring us joy and pleasure, but, they do way more than that. Your dog is only as good as you. There's exceptions to every rule, but as a canine behavioral neuroscience specialist, you learn that imprinting behavior matters. And they are the key elements in connecting to your dog. So dogs communicate on 3 different levels. Primary, which is the way we talk. Secondary is the sounds we make and the hand signals that we have. And tertiary is our mind. Dogs don't talk to each other. They communicate. Birds don't take a lesson in flying. They just know it. Dogs understand. And the breeding process is so critical to bringing that behavioral aspect that transfers from the mother and the father in the pack to the baby. Mm-hmm. Most will stop nursing at 3 or 4 weeks. It is critical that the puppy and the mother determine when they're going to stop nursing. That nursing is really critical to the confidence, the comfort, and also their immunity, their strength, their character, and also being able to communicate that to others. Thus, they become our mothers and our fathers as creatures who serve us. And they serve us.
Are you saying that in general, most people will stop the dogs from nursing at 3 to 4 weeks, but really they should let the mama dog and the baby determine when that process should stop? Is that what you're saying?
It is, but it's a lot of work. People, and in the beginning it was why, you mix a retriever, and don't get me wrong, they're great dogs and they're beautiful, but you're mixing a retriever who will have 10 to 15 puppies and a poodle who will have 6 to 8 maximum. and it becomes a bankroll. How can a mother with 8 nipples nurse 13 dogs?
Oh.
They have to stop nursing 3 to 4 weeks. There isn't enough milk. But even if it's a small litter, like a teacup or a small puppy, the reason that they do it in a puppy mill is because if they separate the mommy and the baby, they go into an extra heat. So then they breed 3 times a year instead of 1. And that's what a puppy mill is. You know, a puppy mill is, believe me, I mean, a puppy mill creates the Stockholm syndrome, which is a syndrome of they don't know how to socialize. They don't know how to play. They've never slept in a bed. They've never, you know, they've never been handled by human hands. It's kind of like the experiment that they did with monkeys. And they put monkeys with a mother, and they put monkeys, the same sibling, in a cage that had all the warmness, the fur, the bottle, the sounds. And one monkey rated, and one monkey became a criminal.
Wow.
Which is not to say that, you know, adopted humans, you know, we don't put a bottle in a bed and then walk away. You know, adopted humans are being nursed and nurtured. So I'm in about good, solid breeding.
Hope they are. We hope they are. Not all parents are meant to be parents. So I think that the animal world and the human world oftentimes mimic each other a lot more closely than we would like them to.
Exactly. I work with inner city children, and I was involved with Eastfield Ming Kwang, which is an organization that helps transition children who are abused and sexually abused to try to provide therapy and help and education so that they can move on in healthy ways. And, you know, our dogs played a big part in that, and a big part at Stanford with children in cancer and veterans, retired priests. I mean, aged homes, nursing homes. There's just something additional about walking into a nursing home and, you know, a rehabilitation home and with brain injuries, and you see everybody like this. And you walk in with a dog and they engage and they want to reach. There's something so instinctual and very instinctual for the dog as well. The dog just sees that fragile quality and they just want to connect. And that's why I say dog is God spelled backwards.
Now, Sarah, I mean, I actually haven't looked at any research in this, and I don't know if there's any out there, but it just makes sense to me that dogs would be amazing with working with Alzheimer's patients.
Absolutely.
Is there any research to that, or you know, can you speak to that?
Autistic spectrum, Alzheimer's, because a dog is unconditional. And that's why, you know, people think, oh, children with autism, they're challenged. No, they're brilliant. They just are on a different plane.
Right.
You know,
I like to call them differently abled.
Exactly. They're not strapped to the dictates of our society and how we imagine people are supposed to behave. You know, they're on the things that, you know, they want to do. And burn patients, oh my gosh, you know, who are so self-conscious.
Right.
You know, and children who are in pain forget that they're in pain. You know, many, you know, people will oftentimes have a terminally ill sibling, child, person in their family. And people say, well, why would you bring a dog to a terminally ill person? And there's so many reasons, but one, it brings comfort. If you're in infusion or if you're in therapy, a dog that will sit there for you for hours is just comforting. And you can't talk. How long can you talk? You can't talk when you're in IV infusion. You're in a lot of pain. And dog just will sit there, or a bunny, or a kitten. It's a creature that has unconditional love. And I see many people, it changes their life. Sometimes a very, as an example, I have single men that come to me, and they're usually brainiacs, and so kind of show up dirty, which I think is a really great look to me. I like it. But I'm like, you need a dog that people are going to approach you when you have something to talk about. Right. You can't always talk about astrophysics, the lady at Nordstrom's, but you talk to astrophysics to everyone. Probably want to talk to the lady at Nordstrom's, so I'll be like, I'll get him a personal shot. They think they're getting a dog. What they're really getting is a life coach. They just need a little bit of, and then we do our training and socialization out in the world where I introduce them to people, all kinds of people. And you just see huge transformations. People that are able to create a relationship, people that are able to just bring their dog to work, and their product happiness just increase.
That's something that I've noticed a lot more recently. I had gone on a couple of job interviews down in San Francisco. And when I went into the job sites, most of the jobs, the people were fairly younger, their 30s, maybe early 40s at best. But what I noticed was that a lot of them had their dogs with them, and that the jobs have become very dog friendly. And you had all of these dogs on the job site, but the dogs were mellow, and the people seemed that much calmer. I mean, the places that had the dogs present just seemed like much more pleasant places to work. The people seemed happier, calmer. I'm sure if they had to do overtime, they weren't as stressed about having to do overtime because they had their best friend with them. So, I mean, I think that's a tremendous thing to allow the dogs in the workplace, because I think it does make a big difference in the atmosphere of the workplace.
Well, it's much better dog to work than a child.
Yes.
I was going to say, it's amazing because, first of all, Sarah, I'm just new to all this. I mean, I'm being really involved now in this world of a whole experience where, I mean, I'm familiar with having someone in your family such as a dog or a cat, and we talked about this last week in the last show. But really, you're talking about a whole different dimension right now on how to see the interaction and the integration of having dogs in the actual environment. Now, Doctor, you just mentioned something that I have not seen before. At work, I mean, other than service dogs, and we'll talk about, I've never seen, just having dogs interacted, and employers even considering that. I mean, they haven't even, to your point, considering now kids and daycare. I mean, this is going to be a whole different world. But I guess I have to say, California in general has always been a very more open state to a lot of new things, and they've always become pioneers before other states catch up to them. So, I mean, that's something that's an advantage you guys have. And it is amazing to know that this is available, because one thing we discussed last week was the energy of the the animals and the pets and the just dogs, kittens, what you name it. They come in. You talked about sick people or terminal people, and they're a very, very low, body and everything. It's not, they're basically not there physically. It's difficult. But then something changes when that energy goes into that room. It's a whole different level. Even kids, I've seen kids actually at school getting engaged with, they bring in these pets and things like that to the school, and they get excited. It's a whole different world. So it does change. I see a dog, a puppy, and going crazy. I go crazy too. It's just normal. A natural instinct will do that. I'm telling you, you just get playful and you get all excited about it. We're all the same. So it's amazing. Whatever spectrum you talked about autism, I think it changes the dynamics, just the presence. And there's got to be something beyond that we understand, because the world is full of energies and things that we don't even comprehend yet. And there's got to be some interaction out there. And it is amazing to hear that we're getting to a point where things like this are happening out there, and it's changing the world, changing lives. And I mean, we know that that's been happening with service dogs, and again, that's part of the discussion today. So, go ahead, Doctor. I know you wanted to interject there.
I was just going to say, as Sarah said, dog is God spelled backward. And I think dogs have just this incredibly positive energy. They're pure love, and that energy is infectious. And I think even for people who may have severe autism or who may be caged in by Alzheimer's, there's this love connection that's made that allows them to embrace and connect with this animal. And, I think that spills over into all areas, whether it's at home or in a hospital or at work. I know that when I take Rosie to the cancer center, some patients who traditionally have been, very quiet, they're in pain, they don't want to be bothered and all, you see them light up. But not only do you see the patients affected, what I always love is how it affects the staff. And that's important in this day and age when our care providers are just so burnt out and tired. You bring that dog in, everybody lights up, and you see the change in their energy as they go about the rest of the time doing their work. They're now uplifted, and the patients are chattering and the staff is chattering. Everybody's uplifted. That has got to be, dogs are an avenue to peace. I'm convinced of that.
Agree. Our prisons in California also have programs where prisoners of violent crimes are rehabilitated by training service for veterans. Mm-hmm. And it is one of the most outstanding and innovative programs on the West Coast. Yes. And it has wonderful ramifications.
Mm-hmm. And they're doing that with kids, with the juvenile programs too, with the juvenile delinquency programs, assigning them dogs to help them learn responsibility and help them learn to care about something other than themselves. These are kids who are damaged by their environments, and connecting with this dog allows them to basically reconnect with their own humanity. And you're right. Those are some amazing programs in the penal system.
Well, there's also a wonderful program in California, which is, and I train dogs and certify dogs for the reading program. So 3 times a week, they go to underprivileged schools and do a reading program where the child is one-on-one with the dog handler, who's also the owner, and who's educated in helping. Many of them are hypnotherapists, so you're able to connect the child on different levels and to help that child read. Because if we can get children to read, it's really akin to bringing water to a village. It's the core root how they advance. Water is the core root to health, and reading is the core root to success.
Mm-hmm. Right. So are the children actually like reading to the dogs?
They start to read, and then the coach says, because they're afraid to read in front of other people, and they'll be like, "Oh, and she said," and then that we teach the coaches. They go down to the dog and says, "Callie says it says gigantic." And it says gigantic, and gigantic. Thank you, Callie. And then as they approach these words, I can't read more than 3 words, and they say, "Oh, I am big. You can do that. You can do that." And oh, darn it. Do you have a cord? And then the child, will actually read it back. So they're beginning to learn association and comfort and confidence. But also because they're so poor, many of these children the only meals they have are when they come to school.
Mhm.
So we're really, there's millions of people that are the working poor. There's many children out in California that their families are living in their cars.
Yes.
So we have programs come and change their clothes at school. Take off the dirty ones, they put the clean ones on. Now they started putting in showers, so at least the kids can come to school and eat and wear some clothes.
Mhm.
So, thank you. Running out of battery here.
Ah,
I have to, in order to organize my house to get ready to move, I have to have a generator. there's no
bless your heart. That has to be so difficult. It's always so difficult to be displaced.
You know what? You cry if somebody dies. You don't cry if you lose your stupid house.
Right.
I mean,
Well, and for those of you who don't know, we're talking about Sara Jane recently lost her home. Was it to fires?
Yeah.
So she is displaced right now while she's getting prepared to move into a new home.
Well, I'm actually living in the most beautiful place. It's like 5 times the size of my house.
Not a bad
The
deal.
biggest insurance check. Have good insurance. Good insurance is everything. The guy says to me, "Oh, I've never seen someone overinsured." And I said, "Really?" He says, "Curious, why did you do that?" And I said, "Oh, Daddy told me." And he goes, "Daddy told you?" And I said, "Oh, Big Daddy. Daddy tells me everything." And I listened to him right away. I said, "Clearly, it was a good idea, don't you think?"
Absolutely.
But I mean, the crux in that is that, it put my whole program, into a temporary standstill in many ways.
Right.
But, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Right.
Okay.
A lot of so did you show the dogs with you?
They were everywhere for 3 weeks. And then now I went away for 2 weeks to Mexico, and we went to Sausalito and traveling, and then now we're going to Carmel. So you got to rest and rejuvenate, and they're all doing fine. And I'm sure they'll be so happy to have me back. But I'm reinventing everything, as you know, on your last move.
Right.
You can't have growth without discourse. And the more discourse, the better opportunity for growth. So as I'm really revisiting everything and what I'm doing, much like you, I am creating in my mind, venues and avenues where they have online imprinting for the first, few weeks of puppy rearing when they go home. Have a way to set things up. Have a way to work with invisible disabilities or non-visible disabilities. How do you have a dog react to sound if you can't hear? How do you have a dog target around you if you can't see? In other words, you're not sight impaired enough that, you can't see, but you're limited in how well your peripheral vision, might see. Or people say, "Oh, but I'm not really sick." And like, you can't see diabetes. You can't see AFib.
Right.
I mean,
that's a difficult thing because people will have a service dog and they don't have a visible impairment. They're not in a chair. They don't have a cane. They look perfectly healthy. And when that happens, there's a disconnect for people. And the dog may be clearly marked as a service dog, but then there's this kind of funky attitude that comes like, well, why do you have a service dog? You're obviously fine. And it's always difficult to educate people because you're constantly having to educate people that there are invisible disabilities and that these dogs, they don't just lead the blind, but that they do have these other amazing abilities that can help a person with any type of a disability.
Right, and I choose to use non-visible because if you say invisible, people think it's like the invisible cloak with Harry Potter.
Right.
That it's a joke, and it's not, and so I mean, there's times when I think to myself, and this is a very rude thought, people go, what's wrong with you? You look fine. You're not blind. You're not deaf. And I think to myself, well, I can see that you're stupid and I can hear you're even stupider. I would never say that, but you're just like, do you hear yourself?
Oh boy.
But you are definitely able to. You are very challenged. We need to get you a dog as well.
You might qualify, right? Well, thank you. First of all, I want to just commend you. I mean, for what you just said about the positivity that you have in terms of, in light of everything that you've endured, and you're still managing. You get creative with it, and you made it, and you said it. I mean, you have to adjust and adapt and make it work. And that's something that's very difficult to do. And, I guess your training and what you do to help people had helped you, tremendously. And now you actually are a guide to other people because things can happen to any one of us. And sometimes we're,
in a minute.
Exactly.
Changes in a minute. I do end of life in hospitals with the dogs and the family, and nothing touches your heart more than understanding that we don't know what minute we have or don't have. Life can change in a minute. And
all of us.
Yes. I just lost a friend who was, 52 years old, the most beautiful, gorgeous, happy, wonderful, amazing woman, just stood up and was raising money, for the junior league and blah, blah, blah. And she said, I have a massive headache. And she was dead before she hit the floor. Life can change in a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's important for people to really realize that, enjoy the time, live your life to the fullest, and don't let anything stress you out because it's not worth it. And have a different positive outlook of life. I mean, your mindset is just tremendous. And I think everybody watching, listening, and this is not the real topic of today, but I think that's something that we had to extract here because, I mean, that is difficult. And again, and your example, I mean, there's many people out there have suffered through the fires. And right now we have Florida, for example, with the hurricane, and, and things are happening. People's lives are changing every single minute and second, actually. And nobody's expecting that. It's like, voila, it's happening. Now we have to deal with it. But changing the way you, and maybe, to your point, maybe, our furry friends can be helpful as well in some of this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the outlook, right? It's how you think.
It's not what happens to you. It's how you deal with the what. And, sometimes we're not listening to the universe. And then the universe makes us listen to the universe. And so you have to say, what did I miss? What am I supposed to be doing? Because clearly I'm not supposed to be doing what I was doing before because it's impossible at the moment. And so it really, crisis equals opportunity.
Yes.
And that's what I just call it, C equals O.
Yes.
Again, go ahead, Doc.
Sara Jane has a house full of the most gorgeous, loving dogs. There's no way you cannot be positive with all of that love around you. And I mean, every so often she has these litters of absolutely gorgeous puppies. They all look like teddy bears or FAO Schwartz dogs. They're just stunningly beautiful and incredibly loving. And, all dogs are loving, but Sara Jane's dogs are extra loving because she's so positive. She's so gentle. She's so tuned in. And, her dogs just from very early have the most amazing dispositions. I got Rosie from Sara Jane, and you'll remember Rosie from last week. She's still here. I got
Hey.
Rosie from Sara Jane. She was like 6 weeks. No, not even 6 weeks when I saw her, but when I got her at 10 weeks, Rosie was the most amazing dog. She was so mellow, and she was just impossibly easy. I mean, it's like a dog shouldn't be that easy to train, but she had such a good start that it made training her very, very, very easy. So,
Well, doctor, I always say likes attract. And people say, oh, how do you part with your dogs? And, you just put it out in the universe. And, I don't advertise or anything. I mean, I just wake up one day and it's just like, I'm like, God, just send me somebody who's supposed to be here. And they show up. And then they always, sometimes they're so confused. It's just so odd. Blah, blah, blah. And I go, 2 people said a prayer and the prayer came down into an apex. Right?
Prayer works.
Rosie chose me.
Yeah. Oh, they all do.
The minute I walked in, she was just like all over me. This is going to be my mommy.
Well, again, we talked about energy and chemistry, right? So this is it. I mean, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you were going to say something.
Oh, I'm just going to say that dogs, they choose their owners and then they let everyone else know right away.
Off limits.
Yeah. Well, and they just walk around like they get collared. I'm like, oh, you want the mommy. And they all just know. Sometimes they say, you're going to be the only dog. And they go like this. Mine go, never mind. Like that means somebody's going. Right? But the joy and love that they bring is really the only way I could part with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sara, talk to us about the Service Paws for Veterans program, because that's an amazing program and it's such a service.
Well, one of the organizations I work with is called FISH, Friends Interested in Serving Heroes. It's one of the largest organizations. It's out of the Midwest. My dad's family is in the Midwest, and my niece was doing a wreath program for veterans, and they raised money for 5,000 wreaths for the veterans' grave for Veterans Day. And she heard this story about how they've been taken advantage of with the dog. And I said, actually one of the guys, Chris Benson, who is one on the board of directors and the treasurer, call me. And he tells me they had this $10,000 story. Now, at the time, at the first time, with animals and dogs and business, it ebbs and flows. You'll have the high points. Anyone who thinks that you get rich on dogs doesn't know what they're talking about. You get rich in love and rich in experience, and you're able to support yourself and those around you, but nobody's going to get a private jet. So long story short,
let's talk about that for a second. On the average, what does it cost to bring one of these dogs from birth to the time that you actually give the dog away? Because you do a lot for that dog before the person even receives it, the shots and different certifications and stuff. You do a lot.
It's 24/7. It's 24/7 for 8 to 10 weeks and longer. But it starts off at 2,000 minimum. Yeah, and what do you have to make to pay 2,000? You know what I mean? It's not really 2,000, but in talking to this man, he says, we just can't afford it. And I said, well, I'll make it really affordable. And he goes, it kind of doesn't even matter what, because we paid $10,000 and we didn't even get a dog. And I said, well, I know how to make it affordable. And he said, what? And I said, I would like to donate a dog. He burst into tears. He's like, I don't think I heard you. Well, it ended up that, we named one of the service dogs Charlie. We brought Charlie to Kansas. Chris was a Vietnam vet, married a Vietnamese woman later in life. But he had Charlie the first week, and Charlie was 10 weeks old and a little white, fluffy. And as he was going to the banks to get funding, he just put Charlie on the conference table. And Charlie would go visit everybody because that's what we taught him. Go say hello, go sit in the hallway, then lay down. And they tripled the donations in that 3 months when they got that dog. Then the next year came and they had a female veteran who'd been through hell. And we prepared a second dog. Well, they wanted me to deliver the dog and the puppy in over Labor Day. So I got to walk in the shortest veterans parade in Missouri. Right? I was all excited. I'm going to be at a parade. Right? And I traveled with Baron, my big, huge 68-pound white dog, and, Sergeant Fred. And we went there. We were on Channel 4 News for 12 minutes at this dental office. And then we got to make a speech and ride in the parade and, meet everybody. And it was just so incredible. Regularly I try to really work with organizations, but it's not easy because the match, because someone needs a service dog doesn't mean that they're going to thrive with a service dog, because your dog is only as good as you. Many people who are not well, if they don't have the capacity for the network in their family, they're really unable to manage even the best dog.
Right.
The program that Chris has been working on is a program which creates the pack in the family so that they have the same language with the dog, with their puppy, with their service animal. And thus they start to engage in a language with their family, with each other. Mm-hmm. But it's much easier to rehabilitate a prisoner than a veteran who's been in active combat, who's either injured or has post-traumatic stress, or has really endured the atrocities of active warfare. It's not easy. But so Fish does many, many things. It's not just the service dogs, but they work with service dogs. I work with a doctor out here who is a myofascial surgeon, and gratis does facial surgery on veterans who've been injured with facial injuries. And he was a veteran. He was actually a lieutenant commander in the nuclear Navy in the same year that my brother was and still is. And he'll just call me in the middle of the night because he was one of our consulting, doctors for certifying a letter. And he'll just be, okay, it's raining. This guy can't get on the bus. This is where he is. We have this rule, like it doesn't matter the day or time of the day or night. And we're able to get them into a boarding house or get them on a train or get them into a hotel. And sometimes it's just a matter of a conversation. Or I work with and represent people who are taking their dog to work and who want to bring a service dog and have their rights violated, or trying to get on a plane. And I always say that taking classes at Stanford for business, real estate, and contract law, wasn't really sure what it was going to do except make me smart, but it certainly helps me truly understand the rules of the U.S. Department of Justice, Aviation, and Transportation. And what people need to understand is that duties and rights come with responsibilities to equal privileges. So it's a federal privilege, it's a federal offense. Mm-hmm. So all those things that people do online, they're really cracking down, and they'll take your dog away. Mm-hmm. They'll take your dog away and detain you. Mm-hmm. And I think the year that they mandated the federal law in April of 2020 to create it equal and the same through the U.S. Department of Transportation to all airlines, so that it wasn't a big mishmash, was so that people were able to understand the rules and have the same forms in every single instance. But the year that it went to Washington to mandate those changes, which happened in April of 2000 and July of 2000, became very stringent. There were 21,000 complaints in 1 year that were totaled, not that were uncalculated, not that were already there, but things that were reported. And those were bad behavior of dogs and people and dogs. So you can be removed if you're not behaving or if your dog's not behaving. Your federal rights go out the window if you're not carrying out your duties and responsibilities, because those equal your rights and privileges. So my program really focuses on orientation, education, understanding, application, and empowering people to be able to confidently, without having to defend themselves, have the privilege and right of a service animal.
Right. Now, can you for us define the difference between a service dog, a certified service dog, an emotional support animal, a certified emotional support animal, and somebody's poochie that they want to call a support animal? Can you define the differences and the responsibility?
Yes. Absolutely. First of all, a service animal and an emotional support. All privileges go with a service animal. Limited privileges go with a therapy or an emotional support dog. Emotional support dog has a very wide spectrum. Emotional support will come from a therapist because people have suffered, tragedies in many ways, but their dog is not a trained animal other than to be with them. They need them in their apartment. They need them in the car. They need them at work, but they're not trained to do a task. A service dog must have a specific task. My specialty is medical alert. What does that mean? It's actually very easy thing to train. Dogs smell the transdermal layer of our skin. That's the outside level. The transdermal layer of our skin will give us a secret an hour before we feel it in our brain, in our body, or in our bloodstream. So an animal that is trained to understand an imbalance, they smell an acid. They can smell different things. They'll nudge. It's time to drink water, nutrition, medication, because those things will balance out our body and then balance out our energy.
And so even I have that nudging thing that they do. Because I have not had that happen with other dogs. Is this something that they naturally do, or is this something that you train them to do?
Well, I'm hypoglycemic unaware. So when I'm working with my dogs, I'm one of these people that I just donate, and then my blood sugar will just crash. But you have to stay hydrated and you have to stay. And so I'll just have all of a sudden everybody's like, I'm like, what is going on? And I'm like, oh, water.
It's time.
Yes.
So, it's really kind of natural. And it's very interesting because my dogs not only target with me, but when I'm in the airport, I will have my larger dogs actually go up to people. Now, since COVID, it's very different. You can't see somebody's face, but they would just go up and start nudging a stranger. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And then I notice that they're clammy, kind of pale. And I'm like, are you okay? Can I get you some water? And they go, why do you ask? I said, well, I kind of feel like you look when I need food or medicine. Just saying, okay. But it's really not hard. It's sort of like just Pavlov's dog. The pooch bell on the door, you hit it and you say, let's go do the business. Let's go outside. And you're not making them do it. You're doing it and going outside and they're having an action. I operate by reverse command. So in other words, when they're puppies and they're sitting, I say, sit, good job. If they jump up, you give that repeated task a name. So you're just imprinting a natural behavior and giving it a name so they associate it. I'll go in for training, and here I am holding my little notebook, right? And people are like, the dog's jumping and down, sit, stay, down, sit, stay. And I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, well, would you like to sit down? And I said, well, I'm not sure if I should down, sit, or stay. And they're like, oh, no. We weren't talking to you. We were talking to the dog. And I'm like, yeah, that wasn't very clear either. We started, and they go like this. Oh, right. Down, sit, stay. My dog is really smart. I'm really trained. Down, sit, stay. Down, sit, stay. They're not doing any of it. And I'm like, can your dog stay? Oh no, my dog doesn't stay. And I said, this dog's not trained. Dog needs to down, sit, stay. Sit means sit. Stay means stay.
Right.
So it's a process, and it's a communication by them understanding what is really going to make you happy, and what a dog wants to do what we want it to do if they know what that is. And unfortunately, people give mixed messages. So it's learning a fine dance. I always tell people with a new puppy, I said, oh, I love you. They said, why? We don't know anything. I said, exactly. You have no bad habits. It's like never skiing and hiring an instructor. You have no bad habits. You're being trained by someone who's giving you form and function. And a dog is form, function, language, and care. And just those 5 things create a circle of success.
And if we could just get people to translate that to their children, I think that we'd have a lot better behaved children and a lot better behaving world of adults as well.
Well, I've had my friends say, Sarah, do you realize that you talk to the children like dogs? And I go, no, I talk to dogs like I talk to children.
Yes.
Children want to do what you want them to do, and they know what that is. You don't say, oh, could you do? No, please pick up your shoes. Stop that now, please. Come to me now, please. You don't ask a question. A child that doesn't have an answer is just saying, discipline me. I can't discipline myself. They don't have an answer. Stupidest thing. What do you think you're doing? Of course, they don't know what they're doing, or they wouldn't be doing it. So, and the same with the dog. What do you think you're doing? Or people that have a conversation, the cartoon with Peanuts and the dog, and you never see the adults. We hear, rah, 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 rah. And that's what dogs hear when we chitter chatter.
Yes.
So I wanted to go back to a point that Doctor you made earlier about the people. You have to find yourself all the time trying to kind of justify, is your dog, a service dog, and is it qualified? Is it qualified? Not qualified? All that, So I know you've kind of defined a little bit about the different types between therapy, emotional, and service, but how can we? I mean, obviously they're supposed to. I think they're supposed to carry like their badges or some sort of tag that defines that.
No,
so
you don't have to have. The reason I do that is so that there's not ignorant people. It clearly defines what the rules are for everybody. But Canine Good Citizen has 12 things that they need to do. They need to be able to sit. They need to be able to stay. They need to be able to walk through a crowd. They need to be able to meet a stranger. They need to be able to have distraction. They need to be able to settle when they need to settle. And they also need to understand what the difference is when their person is not well. Sometimes dogs will actually, we train them for many things. I also work with paraplegics. And so we do task orientation where they actually pull the wheelchair. They learn how to open a refrigerator, not only just open it, but to shut it. We have dogs now retrieving keys, pens, sunglasses, especially remotes. People in a wheelchair, people in bed can't, pick it up. Opening a door. And designing homes so that those things can happen. Those are visible and physical visually physical disabilities. But it is a very fine line, and the federal government, especially in California, is very strict. You may only ask 2 questions. Is that a service dog? The answer is yes or no. What task is your dog trained to perform? Not what's wrong with you, not anything else. All of my letters are cloaked in invisibility. You know, the Hippocratic Oath states that the doctor is very well aware of your physical challenges and your physical health. What are those things? People think because I have AFib or high blood pressure, it's not eligible for service. But 99% of all disabilities are not visible. People that get a tightness of breath start to get a massive headache. People that lose their balance, people who become nervous and need to sit down. Dogs will target for that in several different ways. They either grab your hand, they'll nudge you, they'll start to bother you because they've been trained for that, but their personality has not been trained out. A hearing dog and a seeing eye dog, their personality has to be trained out of the dog. Mm-hmm. They have no personality. People with seeing eye dogs have oftentimes been robbed if they're blind and not even know it. And the dog is not trained to notify. So sometimes people that have like a seeing eye or hearing dog have a second dog for other things. Wow. So it is a fine line. These good questions, and I wish there were more answers, but because the scope is so broad, it's just important to know, like, what is the issue? You know, what is the task? Medical alert goes very far and wide. Medical alert actually crosses into what someone might think is emotional support, you know, but when you're shaking and you're starting to go into a post-traumatic stress episode, you're holding that dog tight. So that's pressing into or on. If you have an issue with your leg, leaning into and on. The list is very, very long on what that task should be. I group it into medical alert because I don't want to open up the conversation to why.
So, Sarah, one can't assume that all these conditions can be pretty much determined by your primary doctor or physician, right? And then ultimately they'll determine that you have a need. And whether, to your point, disability is obvious or you know, not as obvious, either way, the doctors can determine that. And then based on that, they will give you a referral, I guess, to someone such as yourself, Sarah, and then they'll be able to determine which.
A doctor will make a recommendation that a trained service animal would be a benefit, and they leave it at that because they're actually not able to, you know, I mean, it's so sad. They're not able to make referrals. Wow. A doctor who has one of my dogs in his office or her office can say, oh, we love this dog. And that's it. And they can say, well, you know, go to Instagram to Central Coast Poodles. Now with Instagram, you don't need a card. You don't need anything. If somebody doesn't have Instagram, then, you know, you've got to go to snail communication, like texting or something, you know? Something archaic like that.
They still work. but it is amazing that you said that. So I guess technically they cannot make a recommendation or referral. I mean, a referral, like, which is a prescribed referral, but they can just say, okay, well, maybe you should consult and get and see what works for you. I mean, so they give more of a recommendation, just an open, and then it's up to you to to the person to actually really say, okay, I think I should, and then ultimately make a decision and then talk to a specialist who will guide them to what type of service dog they would need. To your point, it could be one, it could be the other. And by the way, that was great clarification about the types, because for the common person, me personally, I would just think it's one type, right? And we've covered quite a few types right now. But that leads to the next question. And I know, Doctor, you want to jump in. But one other question is that now, how do we prevent fraud? You know, and people just kind of like stating, you know, oh, that's my service dog and stuff. Because you said we cannot have tags. They cannot be really clear. Most of us would not understand what the description you mentioned about what they're supposed to be doing. Therefore, anybody can take advantage of that and do it. And so what can we do to prevent it? And what are the, I guess, the ramification of fraud with service dogs?
Well, the ramifications is that, it's no one else's job to determine that. You can ask anybody to leave with an ill-behaved dog or a person, but it's a federal privilege and a federal offense. Generally, if you're going to cross over into the U.S. Department of Transportation, and you can be uncovered there. Any place that you're supposed to go and have a certification, which the federal government, when you cross the baggage claim, when you check your baggage and go through security, federal government is off. U.S. Department of Transportation, the rules prevail. You can be asked to leave a plane for any reason whatsoever, valid or invalid, and you have to disembark, or they'll get an air marshal. But you can call for airline resolution manager, and they have to be there by federal law and transportation law in 20 minutes, either on the phone or in person. I've been asked to leave a plane, and they couldn't give me a reason why. And so I educate my people to say, I'm happy to get off the plane, but
why?
My baggage is above. I need you to please have somebody get it down. And my medication and my suitcases with that is in the hold of the plane. Please remove it. And they have to hold the whole plane up.
Wow.
And I travel with medical grade water. So a machine. I travel with Enagic water, which is structured water. And I have to have that everywhere with me. And they can't even tell me I can't bring extra bags on the plane. I usually travel with my 2 and another 2. And they have to let you on the plane with it because it can't go into the hold. It's a piece of equipment that can't be bounced around. It has to be carefully taken care of. But you get in trouble in the airport, they'll detain you and they'll separate you from your dog. And there's the fines. The fines can exceed $5,000. So it's. I tell people, it's a federal privilege and a federal offense. Now let's just use Starbucks as an example. Starbucks had a violation in Seattle, which netted $1 million payout to the person with the dog. And now it says you don't have to have a vest. Everyone gets away with murder. Animal control here in the Los Gatos area, she just came in Santa Clara County. And she's like, you don't even know, pissing on the potato chips and grabbing a biscuit and running away with the coffee. And you're just like, you have to have some kind of big heart and feelings for these people that, we commonly call the dog catcher.
Yes.
They have to deal with so much stuff. And, you just can't even imagine because we're not even there. I have a PowerPoint session. My clients will sometimes call me to say that their rights were violated in a restaurant and they were embarrassed. And, I will call and get management on the phone and go over their duties and responsibilities, which are the rights and privileges of people around them. Because the first offense, you can file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Justice. They typically respond within 10 days after receipt. And the first retail offense can be $75,000. And
moly.
It's pretty serious.
Well, it really does intervene because when I was moving into my new apartment with Rosie, they actually gave me a little bit of trouble about having the dog because they charge a $500 deposit to have a dog. And then they charge you on top of that a monthly fee, which was, I think, $50 or $100 a month on top of your regular rent to have the dog. And I said, well, I'm not supposed to be charged because this is a service dog. And they went through this whole thing about, I had to have an official letter and know what was wrong with me, the whole bit. And I contacted, I was like,
she called. She said, Sarah, 911. And it's like, I got on the phone and I'm just like, I would like to let you know that I went to Stanford for Business, Real Estate and Contract Law And I work very closely with the U.S. Department of Justice. And I said, and I'm actually commissioner of the U.S. Department of Justice in the Service Dog Division. I'd like to go over what you think your rights are and what the rights are of the person with the dog so that we can clarify, then I can understand what we may do better or what you may do better. And you know how fast they signed your lease?
Instant. And it was like, is there anything else I need to do? Crickets.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Knowing, I mean, knowledge is power as well. I mean, some argue, but it does work, especially knowing, to your point, the rights, the privileges, and what's for you and what's on you, and really someone who knows the language. You know, it's powerful. I mean, you the right call, and there's no more discussion. And by the way,
very minuscule, a little minuscule.
Well, you throw in some heavy,
knowledge.
some heavy words in there. The vocabulary was thick. It's small, but it's mighty. So it kind of destroyed them. Like, okay,
I've actually gone into condo associations where they're trying to kick out a dog, and they say, "Well, who are you? You can't represent the tenant." I said, "Oh no, I'm not here representing the tenant. I'm here representing Roxy. Let me show you. Yeah, let me show you Roxy's task," and put her through the grill, handed him a book. I said, "See, she's in a book." Of course, I'd made that book that same day. I just found that book today, Cheryl. And I said, "She's in a book." And I had the book. It was Roxy everywhere. We went to so many nursing homes in one day. With "Doctor, can I take a picture?" "Oh, kindergarten, can we take a picture?" We had like 25 pictures. And this apartment association, the condo association goes, "Oh, we didn't understand." I'm like, well, my goodness, now you do. And so do we. It's all good.
Well, again, this thing is actually very common, with dogs in a lot of places. I have a friend of mine who actually has, he had such a hard time to actually find a place that he didn't have a service dog, and that's the challenge. But with regular dog, he couldn't find a place. I mean,
Right.
Literally everywhere he went, they're not doing, not even charging, they're just not taking. But really the difference here is that, if you have the right credentials and the right need, they cannot even argue with you. But to your point, I mean, someone that doesn't know, I mean, some of these folks, they have no clue. They just happen to be property managers, whatever, they work there. They might not be as clear about the law, whatever it takes. And again, depends on what state. I mean, obviously in California, I mean, but a lot of this stuff is federal, so it doesn't matter what jurisdiction you're in, it's all national.
It goes, it's the way that it goes, it doesn't really matter what the state is. You have more challenges in some states, but it's federal over state, state over county, county over local. And it's still, eschews to the federal government. And that's why, I mean, I think I had 1,300 pages of why they changed 2 rules in April and July. And people go, "What?" And I'm like, I was one of the few people, like, I love contract law. I love reading lots and lots of words when it relates to something like that, and trying to figure out where is the cryptography in it? What is the real message between all the words, and break it down into 10 words. And so education, not just for the people who are accepting a dog so that they can communicate to others, education for their dog, education for them with their dog, and then education of the world around them. And it's just, it's like it's just one drip at a time, one dog, one person at a time. You can't, every dog, every person, every need, every situation is a matrix, and it's all very, very different. It's like trying to win Powerball. There's only going to be one winner at a time.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sara, I mean, the work you do is amazing. The dogs are amazing. If you can give us 3 takeaway points that you'd like our audience to know about service dogs and the work you do, what would those be?
That's a very good question. I would say primarily determine what your empathy is for people around you.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Observation. You know, is somebody challenged? Does somebody need your help? And 3, education. Who are the people around you, the children, no matter how young, no matter how sick? Who are those people and how could they benefit? Because, you know, there's so many different avenues with people that are so passionate about these dogs in helping others in everything from reading, in a prison, in a kindergarten, in a group home, in an aged home, you know, in a rehabilitation hospital. There's veterans, you know, I mean, people are so generous. And I find that people with dogs really are godlike, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and they are just so passionate. It starts with the dog, but what they're bringing is the love, the unconditional love with themselves and their time to the people. So I would just say, you know, it's threefold. It's like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. You have to have
Right.
those 3 things.
Right. And I think the last thing that I would like to ask you, that I'm sure that there's somebody in the audience wants to know, what is the best way to determine that you are getting a good breeder? Because there are lots of scams. I ran into like 3 of them before I came to you. And I mean, I was discerning enough to say, yeah, this doesn't look right. But what should people look for to know if they're getting a legitimate and a qualified breeder that is not a puppy mill and that is breeding good, healthy dogs?
Well, one of the first things is the American Kennel Club is really the platinum standard. There are puppy mills on that site as well. But I would say if you don't know and you're not educated, make sure that you look for a breeder that is close to you. Go and meet them. Now, people couldn't do that during COVID, but we also have FaceTime. We have Zoom and we have FaceTime, and you can see, you know, I mean, I probably placed 20 puppies with FaceTime, you know, where we just set it up on a tripod so that people could actually come into my home and could sit with us. We were so mandated against any kind of contact for almost 2 years. And it was just the most devastating thing. But think about this, March of 2019, beginning of March, if I would have said online puppy masterclass, people would be like, what? You know, and by June, I'm like, online, how do we train? I said, oh, I have a 6-week class. They're like, but we can't. You know, I said, no. Online masterclass. And RuPaul is the one who just, oh, honey, you just need online masterclass. You know, I love RuPaul. For goodness sakes, wear a suit. For goodness sakes, do your homework. You know, find somebody that is close to you. Listen to them carefully and determine what breed is going to be better for you. The American Kennel Club, if you click on any breed, it'll tell you the pros and cons, the health issues and challenges. It is a plethora of information. And I would just counsel people to start there and find a breeder that you like talking to. And if they're far away, ask them who else they know.
Perfect. Well, we are going to have on the site all of Sara Jane's contact information. And if you want to ask her more questions about the dogs, the program, if you want to help support her, because it is expensive to raise these dogs and take care of these dogs. So, you know, if you would like to help support her in any way, or if you yourself are in need of a dog and you think that you might want one of the poodles, or if you just kind of need some direction and how to go about getting a different type of dog even.
Absolutely.
She is an excellent person to talk to, and all of her contact information will be on the site. We encourage you to get in contact with her because she is just an incredible wealth of information. Like I said at the beginning of the show, she's not just a trainer. She's gone the extra mile to understand the dogs, to know the dogs, and there's a big difference. So, highly recommend her for your educational needs and for a lovely dog.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Rosie, you are she needs a fancy collar.
She has fancy colors. Say we have
She
bling.
needs a big, huge bow like this big so she can look like Minnie Pearl.
A bling collar, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, that's a fancy dog. She's blinged out." She's very much a girly girl though, and she likes her bling and she loves her bows. You know how a lot of times you put the bows on their ears, and by the time they get home,
Her mother's is exactly the same. She'll wear them for a week.
Yeah, she's a prissy thing. We like our bows. And the last place that we had her groomed, they don't do bows. They just do the bandanas. And Rosie was like, what's this bandana thing? I'm expecting some bows here.
Yeah. Amazon.
There you go. Yeah. And, I found they have these little baby barrettes for the little babies that don't have much hair. And they work really well for her. So she has her baby barrettes too.
Well, Dr. Cheryl BryantBruce, the celebrity doctor, I have to say that chatters that matter. What a brilliant idea. And Hurricane, you are just a delight and a joy and a pleasure.
Sarah, thank you so much. And thank you for the work you do. That's beyond it, because you touch on a lot of lives. So keep up what you're doing, and then thank you for being with us and sharing your wealth here of knowledge.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay. Peace and happiness.
Blessings to you.
I always say pause on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was Sara Jane Werp, and she does service dog training. And we have enjoyed having her with us. We hope that she'll come back. You have been listening to Chatters That Matter. Let's talk about it. And I am the Celebrity Doc, and here with Hurricane H. We hope you'll come back and join us next week. And if you've enjoyed our show, please like it, please share it, and by all means, please comment on it.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.